This time, in this video, we're looking at the War of 1812. So first of all, we need to look at the causes of the War of 1812. As due to the ongoing Napoleonic Wars, which we looked at in one of the previous videos, Britain attempted to block America from trading with France by passing the Orders in Council in 1807. So this extended the scope of a blockade implemented the year before by forbidding French trade with the United Kingdom, its allies or neutrals, and it instructed the Royal Navy to blockade French ports. So in these methods, the Royal Navy also took many American seamen by impressment, and that means removing seamen from American vessels and forcing them to serve on behalf of the British. The British also agitated the Americans in the Chesapeake-Leopard affair, which occurred off the coast of Virginia on June the 22nd, 1807. And in this naval engagement, the commander of the USS Chesapeake, James Barron, surrendered his vessel to the British. So this created uproar within America and calls for war with Britain. Now instead, it did lead to Thomas Jefferson's Embargo Act, which had the adverse effect of hurting the Americans more severely than the British. So the replacement of the Embargo Act, the Non-Intercourse Act, prohibited trade with both Britain and France, but once again this proved ineffective, and once Napoleon hinted that he would stop restrictions, President James Madison blocked all trade with Britain in November 1810. Now in the autumn of 1811, William Henry Harrison led American troops to victory in the Battle of Tippecanoe. Now this persuaded the American Indians that they required British support to prevent the American settlers from pushing them out further away from their lands. So British supplied arms to the American Indians, and that hindered American expansion and provoked resentment amongst the Americans. So all of these events meant that the Hawks in government attempted to pressurize President James Madison into declaring war upon Britain. So Madison duly responded on June the 18th, 1812, and that was when he declared war upon the British. Now the war was able to receive support in Congress, but Federalists, especially New Englanders who relied heavily on trade with Britain, opposed the war, and they referred to it as Mr. Madison's War. So in order to strike at the British, the American forces immediately attacked Canada, which was a British colony at the time. However, the American forces were badly underprepared, and they faced a well-managed defence coordinated by Sir Isaac Brock. So this resulted in American defeats at the Battle of Queenston Heights and the Siege of Detroit. American attempts also failed to invade Lower Canada and capture Montreal. However, in 1813, the Americans were able to win the Battle of Lake Erie under the management of Oliver Hazard Perry. Now, William Henry Harrison was later able to defeat the Tecumseh Confederacy at the Battle of the Thames in October 1813. So this meant that American control was re-established in the Detroit area. This American dominance in the war, however, was stopped once the British were able to turn its full attention onto the war after the defeat of Napoleon's armies in April 1814. So this meant that British forces raided the Chesapeake Bay, and they eventually managed to capture Washington DC on August 24, 1814 at the Battle of Bladensburg. So this capture led to the burning of government buildings, including the Capitol and the White House. So on September 13th, 1814, Baltimore's Fort McHenry withstood 25 hours of bombardment by the British Navy, and this led to the subsequent withdrawal of British forces, and they began preparing for the campaign against New Orleans. So now we need to look at the end of the War of 1812 and its impact. As by mid-1814, the War of 1812 was proving to be tougher fighting than either side had previously expected. So this meant that Britain, who had just been involved in the costly Napoleonic Wars, and America wanted to find a way of extricating themselves from the war. So this led to American negotiators, which included John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay, to meet with British negotiators at the Belgian city of Ghent. Now the Treaty of Ghent was signed on December 24th, 1814, and it returned US-British relations to the same status as they had been before the war, whilst impressment was unaddressed. Now this meant that the war had essentially ended in a draw. Now although the war was officially over, the news had taken a long time to travel across the Atlantic Ocean, and the British launched their attack on New Orleans in January 1815. So the British met defeat against the US forces under Andrew Jackson, and this left America feeling that they had won the war. So this ended decades of bitter partisan infighting in government and started the era of good feelings. This boosted the national self-confidence of the Americans and encouraged the growing spirit of American expansionism throughout the 19th century. So thank you for watching this video and see you soon. Bye.